And the young Earth model, according to Russ Humphreys, would predict that it would be 18 seconds. Well, we can routinely make these measurements on many different supernovae that are distant in the universe, and the answer is always consistent with the middle-aged universe. Not the very old universe and not the young universe. It's 9 months, and we got high precision on those measurements. Now, let me take you a little closer to home. And instead of talking billions of years, we're going to talk just thousands of years. And we've been able in the last few years, not me, but geophysicists, to make core drills in the Antarctic ice cap, in the northern Greenland ice cap, and also in deep ocean sediments. And we do that, particularly with the Antarctic ice core at Dome C, we get a continuous record of the past 740,000 years. It's kind of like tree rings. Every time a tree goes through an annual cycle, it produces a ring. Well, likewise, that happens under stable cold ice conditions, where every year you get a layer. And so as you drill through, you can simply count how many layers are in the core, and that will tell you how old the bottom of that core is. And in the case of Dome C, we have a continuous record of the past 740,000 years. And you say, well, how can we prove that those must be annual layers? Well, we can look at the dust signatures of volcanic eruptions throughout history. For example, we can look for the dust signature of the Krakatoa volcano, or the one that wiped out Pompeii when Vesuvius erupted. And we can also look at whether or not these annual layers reveal the signature of the variation in the eccentricity of Earth's orbit. And you say, well, that sounds like a mouthful. What does that mean? Well, as the Earth orbits around the Sun, it's not a perfectly circular orbit. It's a slight elliptical orbit. And the ellipticity of that orbit varies with respect to time. That you can make a few measurements on the Earth today, and it will very precisely tell you the behavior of the variation of the Earth's orbit forward and backward in time. And what that tells us is that the Earth must be manifesting a 100,000-year variation in that eccentricity, which would affect the thickness of the layers of the ice. Well, let me show you a picture of how this works. This is the ice layer from Dome C, and you can see the dust signature of Krakatoa up front, and then a couple of thousand years back from that, the dust signature from the Vesuvius eruption that wiped out Pompeii. You can count how many layers exist between the two, and it's identical to what the historical records tell us. So this is one piece of evidence that these indeed must be annual layers. And we also see a perfect variation in the last 7 cycles of the Earth's eccentricity. So all of these cycles are testified of in this ice core. And incidentally, there are 3 ice cores that have been drilled deep in Antarctica, one giving us a continuous record of the past 420,000 years, and one a little more than 100,000. 3 in Greenland, which each give us a record of greater than the past 100,000 years. And the interesting thing is, these 6 ice cores, which give us a continual year-by-year record for the past 100,000 to the past 740,000 years, and give us the identical results. They all show the same dust signatures of volcanic eruptions in the historical records, and they all show us the identical signature of the variation in the Earth's eccentricity and inclination. And we also have core drills in the deep ocean, which, although they don't give us annual layers, give us centennial layers. So every 100 years you would get a layer, and that 100-year resolution perfectly matches what we see in the ice core layers. However, those core drills actually take us back many millions of years rather than just hundreds of thousands of years. Now, certain younger creationist organizations attempt a rebuttal to this. They say, well, in South Greenland, we have evidence for a World War II aircraft that's been buried in almost 100 feet of snow and ice. And doesn't this prove that these Dome C drills and other drills indeed are not measuring annual layers or that they're highly disturbed? But there's a huge difference between South Greenland and North Greenland, and South Greenland and the Antarctic Dome C. Namely, in South Greenland, you get a very heavy snowfall, whereas in all these other places, you get a light snowfall. In South Greenland, the ice is moving at a high rate. In the case of Dome C, it's extremely stable. It's not really undergoing any significant movement. South Greenland, you got overturning ice, which means that ice in a nearby region can overturn ice that has been put down in its vicinity. That does not take place either in North Greenland or the Antarctic cores or in the deep sea core drills. And in the case of South Greenland, it actually gets warm enough there where you get melts in the year, and so you get several layers per year as opposed to one layer per year. Whereas in the case of Dome C, there are no seasonal melts, and there's no melting and refreezing take place. And so we do indeed have a consistent record of the past 740,000 years. So on that basis alone, we would recognize where the assumptions have all been put to the test and proven correct, that indeed at least the ice on planet Earth must be at least 740,000 years, and the seafloor must be much older than that. And this is no exaggeration. Without exception, every other reliable scientific age measuring method is consistent with these best single measures for both the universe and the Earth. And if you want some examples, other measures for the universe would be the cooling time of white dwarfs. White dwarfs are dead stars. They're stars that have burned for so long they've run out of fuel, and now they're just cooling down like cinders on an open fire. But we astronomers can accurately measure the cooling times of these white dwarfs, and they're consistent with the 13.73 billion. Likewise, we can measure how long globular cluster stars have been burning with high accuracy, and we can measure the ratio of uranium to thorium and what are called metal-poor stars. These are the first stars that formed in the universe. And we can look at how long it takes for globular clusters, for example, to settle down to what's called a relaxed dynamic state. In the case of the Earth, we can look at the argon abundance. When you look at the argon abundance on the Earth, on the Moon, and Mercury, they all testify that it took 4.5 billion years for that argon to build up to its current abundance. We can look at the growth of the continents. The Bible tells us that Earth started off with nothing but water on its surface, and then God worked to create the continental land masses, and we can measure the rate at which those continental land masses grew over geologic history, and they're consistent with the age of the Earth. We can measure the rate at which the Earth's rotation rate is slowing down. It's about 4 times slower than it was when God first created life. And we can look at the accumulation of biodeposits, the limestone that's in the Earth, the coal, the oil, and natural gas, and figure out how many billions of years it took for that coal, oil, natural gas, topsoil, kerogen tars, and ores to form. And they are indeed consistent. And therefore, I would conclude that only a strong commitment to a particular interpretation of the Bible would ever cause any scientist to say that the universe is young. But my primary reason, as the president of Reasons to Believe, for saying that the universe must be middle-aged and not young and not old, is that only if the Earth is middle-aged can one hold that all 23 of the Bible's major creation accounts, these would be chapter-length creation accounts or longer, are both literal and consistent. It's not enough to take the Bible literally. We have to take it literally and consistently. And as I've documented in this book, A Matter of Days, when you look at all 23 creation accounts from a young Earth perspective, those accounts would contradict one another, but from a middle-aged perspective, they would not. And in a middle-aged perspective, we would be taking all the accounts literally rather than figuratively.
This has been a presentation of the Ministry of Reasons to Believe. If you would like to know more about other resources offered by Reasons to Believe, or have questions about issues related to science and the Christian faith, please visit our website at reasons.org or call us toll-free at 800-482-7836.